Welcome, everybody, to the Business of Speaking show. I am your host, Tim McDonald, and today I am so glad to be joined by Stan Phelps. How you doing, Stan?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. And for those of you that don't know, this show is not a show to have speakers on to tell us of what they talk about on the stage. It's really about learning their journey to the stage and how they've grown and learned what we don't usually get to see when they're up on stage. So thank you for playing along with me today, Stan.
No problem.
So I always like kind of asking, to kind of get started, because this isn't a planned Q&A, is tell us, your story. How did you get involved in actually speaking?
Yeah, so I was the number two at an agency. This is going back into the 2000s. And one of my main roles as number two was kind of business development and leading creative. And I found, Tim, that, and this is true of all B2B, and it was a B2B kind of sell, is that one of the most effective ways that you sell is at events. And I realized very quickly that the people that had a speaker on their badge were looked at a little differently than those that didn't. And so it led me to go, well, I want to develop business. I see that as an avenue. What would I need to do that? And you have to write, you have to have a point of view, you have to have a message to share, a problem that you solve. And that back in the mid 2000s, 2005 or so, is when I started to pursue speaking, just representing my agency at events. Now, fast forward like 3 or 4 years, I ended up starting a blog, and I wrote for 1 year everything across the board in marketing. And I was looking for the one thing that I thought could make a difference. And when I found it after a year, I decided to go down the rabbit hole and make a project that I thought could potentially lead to a book. And when it took a little over 2 years to write the book, because I was still working full time, and I collected over 1,000 examples for the book. I started getting asked to speak around not only the US, but I went to Sweden, I went up to Canada. And I thought to myself, this may be, I really enjoyed writing. I said, this could be a full-time thing. And so about 8 years ago, I moved the family, almost 8 years ago to the day, to North Carolina. We were living in the New York area in Connecticut, and gave it a full whack of being a full-time author and speaker.
And and if you don't mind, I just love the story because I've heard it before, but that time, because I know what you do speak about, and I know I told everybody we're not going to have you go too in depth on that, but I really love how you kind of had that moment kind of revealed to you of what you took that deep dive in to what you talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have a signature story or something that happens to kind of take this, hero's journey of sorts. Not that I'm a hero, but that's the art of any good story, right? The something that happens. So for me, I was at this rooftop bar in Manhattan, and I was waiting for someone to show up, and I saw this guy who was also waiting, older gentleman. And after a half an hour of no one showing up for him, I just striked up a conversation, and we started talking about waiting. And this guy said something that changed the direction of my life, Tim. We were talking about being on time, and he went, nobody in life is ever on time. And I was like, wait a second, I've been on time before. And he's like, he took his finger to me, and he gave me the Dikembe finger wave. And he said, no. He said, people in life are either early, right, or they're late. He said, no one is ever exactly on time. And that was kind of the spark or metaphor for this principle of the experience we provide is our greatest form of marketing for both our customers and our employees. And it's about the little things that you do to go above and beyond just the exchange or the transaction, to honor the relationship. And that spawned kind of going deep into this, what I called the Purple Goldfish Project.
Yeah, and I love that, because it's so closely aligned with what I believe and what I, kind of am passionate about, these small differences that can make big changes. In your business, as you've grown your speaking business, what are some of the little things you've been doing to kind of differentiate yourself and make a big difference?
Well, I think, this is, first off, you have to realize that speaking is a word of mouth business. And that about 70% of the opportunities that you get to speak are referrals that come to you. And so it's based on either the experience of somebody who's been in the room with you and experienced in my case, the Stan Phelps experience, but in yours, the Tim McDonald experience, or more importantly, it's probably somebody who hired you to deliver that keynote or workshop or training or coaching, and they're recommending you to someone else. So it's two things. It's one is, how do you work with the person that hired you? How do you deliver more than what's expected? And this is so important. How do you become easy to work with? And then it's for the audience member. What do they remember? How do you become sticky in terms of being able to say, for them to say, oh, you've got to hear this message, or this story was amazing. You need to look at Stan next time you have an event. So it's everything I do is trying to do a little bit more. And it's either a little more of value that you provide, whether I give away a free ebook or give everyone my mini book. I have a lot of mini books, or stay later, arrive early, like get my stuff to the event organizer on time, try to give them more than what they need. I mean, it's just a lot of little things that don't seem to matter, but they do.
It's just in the process of putting this show together, the one thing that I've recognized when I ask people for their their headshot, their bio, social media links and everything, just how, like you said, some people make it so easy. and so and I guess, can you maybe, I mean, it doesn't have to be that example, but just give us one example of kind of something you do that you're not revealing, like a a trade secret that you don't want everybody to know, but just to kind of explain like how simple some of these things are.
So one of the things I do, and this is not a trade secret, and I'm not the only one who does it, is that I will make a standard offer to anyone who hires me. And it's something that benefits them, and it's something that benefits me. And here's the offer that I make. I say, Tim, you're the event organizer. I said, Tim, look, I'm excited about the event. I've heard what you want to accomplish. I'm going to tailor my presentation to your needs, right? We should all do that. But I said, do me a favor, Tim. About 75% of my clients will take me up on this. Give me 2 to 4 of like your rock stars. If it's an association, give me like your rock star members, or if it's a company, give me your great employees, the people that already get my message. And I say, just tee me up on an email with them. I will schedule a 15-minute call with them. And what I want to do is just bond, to get a sense of their day-to-day, maybe pull a story or two, right? And have somebody in the audience that when I walk into the room, right, I can call on potentially, or at least feel like I have an ally there. Now, here's the key. I always will bring a copy of one of my books, and I always make it a point to actually meet the person I did the Zoom or the phone call with before the event starts, before my session starts and thank them. And now think about it. Now I've got 3 or 4 or 5 people at all of these different tables or around the room, right, that are my allies, right? Because I spend a little time with them. I'm going to make them look good from the stage. So it helps me in the fact that now I know people in the room, and my material is better because now I'm speaking to their day-to-day and maybe pulling a story or two into the presentation. So it shows that I'm not just giving the same presentation and changing the name of the company on the title slide.
I love that.
Does that help?
Absolutely. I think that's very valuable. And something else that I was kind of curious about is, a lot of what you're talking about obviously was normal for us up until early March. We don't know what it'll look like moving forward. So it's really opened my eyes up to, what it means to be a speaker, because obviously we're used to seeing us up on the stage, and you've kind of alluded to it earlier on when we first started talking. What other elements go into your business outside of just getting paid to be up on a stage?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit unique in the fact that I don't do, most speakers do some type of follow-up project-based work, right? So they're a consultant who speaks, or a consultant or coach that speaks as a way to generate business. Or a lot of people are speakers primarily, but then they do additional stuff that they can offer. I'm a little unique in that fact the only things I make money from are selling books, and no one makes a living off of selling books, doing keynotes and doing trainings, essentially workshops. And so, yeah, that's and now those keynotes and workshops are not only in person. About 97% of what I've done over the last 8 years has been in person. Well, obviously that has almost switched here in the last 3 months. So I've spent a lot of time to try to get ready for what I think is not only the new world for the next 6 to 8 months and maybe 18 months, right? But I think a good part of what speaking will be going forward.
And I've had the pleasure of watching a lot of your videos. You've been guest on, some events I've been, responsible for putting together, and you've talked at other virtual events that I've attended. Right before we went live, you showed me your kind of setup of what you did. I mean, we're doing a one-on-one conversation here, so I see your face, but I love this, and maybe I'll just let you take it over and kind of explain what you got set up there.
Yeah. So, and I'll go back to, so we probably did something in March, right? The
Yes.
program that you put together was in March, believe it or not, which was literally as things were hitting. And I did during that presentation what I normally do before technology was a helper rather than being a hindrance. If you remember, Tim, right? What did I do? I have very nice slides, but I shared my slides full screen, and Zoom made me, I was up here, where am I? I was up here about this big, right? And to me, that is a cop-out. Like, that is a cure for insomnia, if I'm going to be honest. It's nowhere near what the in-person experience is like. So what we have to do, I think it's incumbent upon us, is to try to create an experience that's as good, if not better, than in person while we're doing virtual. And so I've invested a lot of time and energy to create a kind of studio experience to be able to level up what people get. So this is kind of the studio shot. I don't use this all that much, but this kind of gives people a sense of where things are. This is a main shot that I use, Tim. This is similar to me being on stage, right? So you get all of me and my animation, but here are my slides in the background. And I actually wouldn't get as much glare. There's a little bit of glare now. I would tune things up a little bit to help out. But you have this shot, and then what's nice is I can then go full slides. If I'm showing anything that's really intricate, like a matrix, or if someone needs to watch a video, now I can go full slide for that. And then where we were the entire time, which was I call my tight shot. Now this is 4 different feeds. And here's the thing. You need essentially a switcher that allows you to bring all of these feeds into the computer as the computer will recognize it as a webcam. So I'm using a thing called the ATEM Mini, but there are a lot of different switchers out there. And it also allows you're very limited with just the built-in webcam, or even if you get some of the nicer webcams, in terms of how you can focus and get a really clear picture. So it's in a nutshell, it's been the last 2 months have been an education in lighting, in platforms and technology, in sound, in video. But I want to be able to elevate the experience, and that's what it takes. So I've got to be willing to do those little things that will make me stand out.
Well, it certainly does. And you just brought up something. I mean, I could geek out on the technology side of things with you the whole time, but you just brought up something that was very, important. And I think most people overlook, which is the lighting aspect. And,
Yeah.
One thing I notice about you is your background is so in tune with your brand.
Right.
And a lot of that looks like it might be created with lighting.
It is. So it cost me about $100, but I'll go back to the studio shot. So I have, but behind me over here used to be a door. A door is horrible. And I had white walls, a door. What I ended up creating were like fabric. Essentially, I created a frame and then wrapped fabric around it, and then got some LED smart lighting, which I can manage from an app. And I can change the lighting. As you know, I've written 10 different colors of these goldfish books. Purple is my main color, so I can always default to purple. But the idea is I can change the color of the studio, whatever I want it to be the brand. Like yesterday, I spoke for a brand whose predominant color was yellow. So everything was yellow back here. And I do think it's not only the lighting on yourself, but also how do you light the background to complement that. And I'll be honest, lighting's probably the most difficult part. And I went and got help from a guy named Rod Santiano, who was amazing. I got referred by a couple people, and he was amazing in terms of telling me what types of lights and how we could tackle this.
Very nice. Very nice. I love it. So when, and I know you're doing a lot of this and a lot of these virtual events, you can't do like that example that you said necessarily of having that champion in the room necessarily when you go there, but how are you kind of building that referral by doing, the same process of word of mouth through these virtual events?
So first off, here's the thing, and this is why the business of speaking is 70+% word of mouth, is because whoever the company is or the association or the event planner gets hired, you as the speaker are one of the greatest risks, right, of the event. Like, and you can be you don't want to drop a turd in the middle of an event for 45 minutes or an hour. And that's why things like, someone eyewitness that says, oh, I saw Stan and he's great, or I worked with him and he's easy to work with. And that's the challenge in the beginning, is how do you get that if you've never spoken before? And so I think the same thing applies virtually. What's nice about virtual, Tim, is we can take snippets of this and be able to show it very easily online, record via Zoom, split it up. That was more difficult when it was in person. You know, you have a lot more control of the lighting right here than I ever would being in an in-person event. And that's one of the challenges that we have as speakers. Unless you bring your own equipment, like getting good quality footage of you on stage is one of the biggest challenges, because maybe you get good footage, but the sound stinks. And people will tell you sound is actually more important than the quality of the video. So this has been an education. I think word travels. For me, it was, I went back to all of my clients I've worked with over the last 8 years, and I said, Tim, it's going to be hard to sell Stan if someone doesn't know Stan and take a leap on me virtually. But how can I help the people that have supported me over the last 8 years and do something for them? So in the beginning, it was a lot of pro bono. Hey, can I help you? And the hope was that either they would like that, or that when they're in the business of sharing that with people, that they'd be motivated to do it.
Fantastic. I can't believe our time is just about running out, but I just had one final question for you before we kind of wrap up, which is, you know, looking back from when you first started speaking to now, if you could go back and tell your early age speaker something that you wish you would have known, what would that be?
Well, when I first came down here to North Carolina, my old agency, because I was number 2 at the agency, so it was a transition, and I didn't want to feel like I was leaving them in the lurch, right? They asked me, they said, Stan, would you want to continue like 3 days a week and work for the agency 3 days, and that'll give you technically, right, the other 4 days to work on your new speaking business? And of course you think, oh, that's a great idea, Tim, right? Because you know it's a big leap. And if you don't have any income coming in, getting 60% of what you used to get is a nice little, you rationalize it to go, oh, that's a runway. Well, what I learned, and I would tell anyone, is that it's impossible to ride 2 horses with 1 ass. And if you really want to develop and make it as a speaker, if you have the rationale that, hey, I can do this, I can do it part-time, and I can do about 20 engagements a year, and it's just gonna, it's gonna develop. It may take a little longer, but I'm not taking a huge risk. It's impossible to do 2 things and be good at either one. That's my opinion. And there's exceptions to that rule, but I would argue that unless you make the full leap and you can do up to 50 engagements or more, which takes a full-time effort in the beginning to get those engagements, you're never going to make it.
Fantastic advice. Thank you, Stan. And how can people find you, get in touch with you?
So I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn. So look for me on LinkedIn or connect there. And then my main website is stanphelpsspeaks.com. stanphelpsspeaks.com.
And don't forget the 2 S's in Phelps and Speaks.
Yeah, thank you.
Common mistake I make. So, well, thank you so much for joining me, Stan, and for everybody that tuned in. If you liked what you heard and you want to get more information, we're going to stop the YouTube broadcast right now. Stan agreed to stay on with me, and I'm going to ask him one additional question that we'll record, but it's only available to our email subscribers. So if you go to speaking.business and just click join the community and sign up for our email list. You will be getting not only Stan's exclusive advice, but also all of our other guests. So thank you so much for joining the Business of Speaking.